All right, so you should all see the recording prompt. We will record this session. It'll be posted probably later this afternoon. We will replay it for the second part of the info session in the second session of the Ideas Lab. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited. I see 70 people. I'm just overwhelmed and excited to see so many people here this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Jim Davenport. You've probably received one or more emails from me over the last couple of days. I am the head of the task force that organized the Ideas Lab. And so this is sort of the big event that I've been running for the new LSSTC Catalyst Fellowship. Today we've got speakers from both the LSSTC Fellowship Program as well as the new Link program that has been developing. And we've also got some representation from the Vera Rubin Observatory project as well, talking about the status of the observatory and the survey, especially how that relates to the fellowship. My role today is sort of the MC. I'm kind of running the show here on Zoom and on GatherTown. So I'm happy to answer questions about the fellowship, but mostly I'm here to sort of make sure you all have a good time, can do the networking that you're here to do, can get the information about the fellowship that you want to get. So if you have any problems or any concerns, please message me either here in email or in GatherTown. As a reminder, after this hour, we'll be moving over to the GatherTown platform. So in the background, if you're opening that tab, you can get your profile all set up. I will ask that everybody stays muted in Zoom. And in fact, I will enforce that you all stay muted. But my tip to you is don't have Zoom and GatherTown sharing the microphone because you can cause some pretty wild feedback. So make sure you don't accidentally set an audio feedback loop going. All right. I think that's all the technical information we're going to start with this morning. I'm sure we'll come up with more as we go. So welcome, everyone. And the first speaker this morning will be Jenna Sokolowski, who will be talking about the whole thing we're here for, the new LSSTC Catalyst Fellowship Program.
Thanks, Jim. So well before the Rubin Observatory Legacy Survey of Space and Time even got its current name, the LSST Corporation was striving to support and help the LSST scientific community. So today I'm thrilled to be able to describe to you our newest endeavor, and that is the LSST Catalyst Fellowship funded by the John Templeton Foundation. For those of you who are not familiar with LSSTC, we're a consortium of over 30 institutions working together to get the most out of Rubin LSST. And that is both for ourselves, our own institutions, but also for the broader community. And we do this in part by inventing and organizing needed programs like this fellowship. Many of you are probably familiar with other astrophysics prize fellowships like the Hubble Fellowship, and many of the properties of this fellowship will then therefore ring familiar to you. For example, this fellowship is, in fact, it's competitive with many of those other top fellowships. So fellows will have academic freedom, competitive stipend and research allowance, and the opportunity to take part in some community events like annual symposia. Also, standard fellowships will carry 3-year terms. So about how many fellows we plan to offer, fellowships we plan to offer. Each year, we expect to award a cohort of 5 Astro Fellowships, and applications will be open to everyone who has completed their PhD within the past 4 years in an LSST-related discipline, such as astronomy, physics, astrophysics, data science, even in some cases, computer science, if that's relevant to what you want to do with LSST. So when I say open to all, I mean, people can apply from any country, and there are no restrictions on the data rights status of the country from which you're applying. So far, we have funding in hand for the first 2 cohorts, and we also have promising leads for additional funding. So we really hope that this program will continue throughout the LSST survey. Because we'll be soliciting applications from many different types of organizations and early career researchers. The selection committee will be instructed to strive for balance in each cohort. And balance, I mean that on several different axes, such as scientific field, geographical location of where the proposed research will take place, the type of host institution, and also demographic balance among the fellows in a cohort. So fellows will have a wide, or applicants will have a wide choice of host institutions, and those are listed on the fellowship website. I think you all, because you registered here, you must have at least had some interaction with the LSSTC Catalyst Fellowship website. If you go to apply, the apply menu option down, you'll see a listing of host institutions. Those fall into two categories, which I'll discuss in the next two slides. But 4 out of 5 of the fellows will sit at LSSTC member institutions, but 1 of the 5 fellows in the cohort of Astro Fellows will sit at what we're calling an expansion site, and I'll explain that shortly. Okay, the first category of host institutions are LSSTC member institutions. Oh, and here, if you don't want to Google LSSTC and find the fellowship link, is the direct web address for the list of host institutions. So like I said, the first category is LSSTC member institutions. And I just want to point out that some of those are outside of the US. So not only can you apply to this fellowship from outside of the US, but if you are applying, you can put as a potential host institution, an institution that's in one of the countries listed right there. Chile, it's Czech Republic, Italy, Brazil, Germany, Japan, or the UK. So please do go look through that list on our website. I'd also like to point out that some of the listed institutions are actually consortia of institutions. So if you click on those buttons, you'll be able to, for the different host institutions, for some of them, in the blurb about them, you'll see multiple other institutions listed. So be sure to look carefully through those because there are quite a few options. Next week, we will post on the fellowship website the detailed instructions for application, and also we'll open up the application portal. There you'll see that fellows or applicants will list submit a prioritized list of 3 possible host institutions where they would be interested in conducting their research. So do look carefully through these lists to figure out where you might like to take your fellowship. Each host institution has its own particular set of resources that would be advantageous to any early career researcher looking to do Rubin research. Some, for example, have faculty that are very heavily involved in the Rubin science collaborations, even involved in the leadership of those collaborations. Others have, for example, access to proprietary precursor survey data, or in some cases, telescope time. So think of what you want to do and look through what the different institutions have to offer. So 2 institutions I'd like to mention by name because they are connected with an umbrella initiative that LSSTC is also in the process of launching called LINK. And Rachel Mandelbaum, who just joined, I see, will be talking a little later in detail about LINK, but for now I'll just mention that this is briefly an effort, a collaboration between 4 of our member institutions and LSSTC with the goal of creating or leading the creation of some important analysis software for LSST that goes beyond what's being provided by the Rubin Observatory Project. So 2 of the 4 institutions that have been working for several years to get LINK started will be accepting fellows, or at least putting themselves forward as host institutions for fellows this year. And those are Northwestern and the University of Arizona. I'm mentioning them by name because fellows who do go to one of these institutions will be offered 4-year fellowship terms. And the goal there is so that fellows at those institutions can spend more of their time than would otherwise be possible being directly involved with some of those efforts to propose, design, and test analysis tools for LSST data. So if that sounds like you, I'm really excited about tools, but I've been worried about spending my time on that and not being able to publish, this might be a great option for you. The 4 years is so that you can both be involved in software and publish and set yourself up to be in a good place in your career going forward. The second type of potential host institutions are expansion sites. And those are institutions that are currently not LSSTC member institutions, but not just any institution that's not a member institution. Our intent with these expansion sites are to seat one fellow at an institution that is either small in the sense of a small astrophysics faculty, or historically minority serving, or under-resourced in some way. So an institution that might not have been able to afford to buy into LSSTC membership. These can be anywhere in the US, and applicants, we also have some promising expansion sites who have already expressed interest in hosting an LSST focused fellow. We have listed on the fellowship website. So if you're interested in proposing for such, doing your research at such a site, you can either choose from the list of institutions on our website or propose one of your own that fits the intent that I mentioned above. Also, as I mentioned earlier, applicants can submit a ranked list of 3 potential host institutions, and it's perfectly fine to mix these different types of institutions. Your top choice can be a standard LSSTC member institution. Your second choice can be one associated with Link. Your third choice can be an expansion site, or any combination of those. In your application, you'll be asked to address some issue, make some justification for one of your choices for host institution. That'll just be for your top choice primarily. So you can focus on your top choice, but feel free to mix and match. Now, importantly for people applying here, at this, thinking about applying, fellows who do end up at an expansion site will also be offered 4-year terms. In addition, they will receive an extra 10K a year research allowance on top of the default, which I believe is 15K a year. We're providing these extra resources so that fellows sitting at in research environments that might be a little non-traditional, like have small faculty, or if they want to work with students, they're perhaps just undergraduates and they need to spend some time figuring out how to make the best use of the resources that are available in these non-traditional environments, do have time to succeed and publish just as much cutting edge research as all the other fellows. Oh, and I forgot to mention one other thing. An expansion site that receives a fellow will then be partnered, or will be part of a discussion to partner with an LSSTC member institution, again, to provide more support for a fellow at an expansion site and the advisor at that site and the whole department. Good. So as I mentioned before, there's some properties of this fellowship that are very familiar to astrophysicists that have seen other prize fellowships, but some are quite different. The main difference is that this fellowship is not just an astrophysics fellowship. It's actually cross-disciplinary. And in each cohort, along with the 5 astrophysics fellows, we will select 1 or 2 social science fellows. And Anissa Tanwir will speak immediately after me about a little more about the role of the social scientists in this program. So we will be selecting fellows. Their selection will happen a little bit later than this initial call, which is for the astrophysics applications. But in addition, on our steering committee, we have 4 senior social scientists that we're working with closely as we develop the program. As an astrophysics fellow, you will have the opportunity to be involved in the work of the social scientists, both the fellows and the senior social science team. And if you're excited about this, to even collaborate with the social scientists who will be researching how science is done and how research can be done better. Okay, an additional unusual feature of this fellowship is we will provide some structured mentoring and leadership training. So each fellow will put together a committee of peer mentors that will advise them and help them deal with any challenges that come up during their research and as they plan their careers. The cohort will also take some leadership training courses together. So there will be some effort to foster cohesion among the cohort, and fellows will not be alone. This is not a fellowship where we give you some money and say, come back in 3 years with a lot of papers. This is a fellowship where we want to work with you, integrate the fellows into a community, and help provide the training needed for career success after this fellowship. Finally, as I hope you've picked up on already, that we will be focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout every aspect of this program. Some final special features. I already mentioned the connection to link that Rachel Mandelbaum will talk about, but that's not just for the fellow or maybe two that happen to sit at these particular institutions involved in leading link. All fellows will be invited to participate in monthly topical link group meetings. So there'll be, they and their local advisor will be invited to participate, so they really get integrated into that community to the extent that they desire. They will also be preferentially looked to for serving on things like scientific organizing committees for link programs. And finally, all fellows will be automatically granted delegate status for the LSST data previews. Okay, you might be wondering, what are the selection criteria for these fellows, for these fellowships? The selection committee will be instructed to look for two main areas. To look for the selection criteria will fall into two main areas. LSST related research is one, but equally important will be community impact. So the potential for this cohort of fellows to have a positive impact within the LSST community, including the diversity, equity, and inclusivity of that community. So connected to these two main sets of selection criteria that the selection committee will be looking for, applicants will be asked to submit two main documents along with some supporting documents like a CV and publication list, but the two main documents will be a research statement, but also a community impact statement. And I'll discuss that more shortly. Reaching the end here. Sorry, Jim, I realize I'm going a little long. I'll try to be brief. The selection criteria in terms of research. I want to say right off the bat, you're not expected to be experts in Rubin LSST. You're not expected to have already been involved in preparation for LSST. However, fellows do need to demonstrate sufficient understanding of the potential of Rubin Observatory to craft a creative or important or exciting as well as feasible proposal. And here at the networking session would be a great time for you to meet faculty, exchange contact info so you can ask them for help if necessary, or bouncing ideas off each other about creating such a project. Fellows should also either possess or demonstrate the capability to acquire the skills needed to carry out the proposed research. Again, you don't have to be experts already, but need to show that you'll be able to do the work. Finally, our cohort would like to include at least some fellows whose LSST related research will bear fruit in the first 2 years. Not all, but at least some. Okay, second to end, final slide, Jim. Community impact selection criteria. We are looking for fellows who are willing to serve as ambassadors for Rubin science. So both at their proposed host institution and beyond. So again, not fellows who would go into their office or their remote office and not interact, but people who really will make an impact in their department. So as you're walking around, you might, again, exchange contact info for people at the potential host institutions so that you can ask them over the course of the next month, what would work in your department? What would you like? What do you need to help your faculty, students, and staff really get the most out of LSST? We're also looking for fellows that have a strong commitment to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusivity. That can be through past work, plans, or some demonstration of an understanding of barriers faced by some of the community. And we'll ask people to explain how this fellowship would positively impact you and your career, the broader Rubin community, how your fellowship would do that, and possibly other sectors of academia that have not benefited from national facilities as much as major universities. Okay, finally, go to the webpage for the fellowship. Applications are due November 15th. We'll post detailed instructions in the coming week and open the application portal. About, you don't have to worry about letters of recommendations in the first step. Finally, about the Ideas Lab. Just want to say, go there to the networking session, visit multiple rooms, and have fun. Again, the faculty you will meet are not on the selection committee. Okay, so have fun. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jenna. We are admitting people here, and I'm seeing people showing up at the Gather Town. So excellent. I was just going to ask Anissa if she could share and go ahead and take it away.
Yes, I think I'm up next. Good morning, everybody. I'm Anissa Tanweer. I am a research scientist at the eScience Institute at the University of Washington. And I've been tasked with very quickly introducing you to the role of social scientists in this fellowship and the thinking that went into this kind of unique arrangement. So first, there's a long tradition of social scientists investigating science as an object of study itself. So that means researching the practices and organizations and networks that produce science so that we can understand how knowledge is produced. So why do we study science? Science plays a really powerful role in society. It's wrapped up in the formation of our national identities, in determining how public treasure should be spent, informing policy decisions, hopefully, ideally, articulating what futures are worth pursuing, and just generally making sense of our place in the world, in the universe. And so studying science allows us to ask really fundamental and important questions about the social world that are of broad academic interest. But in addition to the more general scholarly value of social studies of science, social scientists can also produce insights that are interesting and useful in particular ways to the very scientific communities they're studying. So there's been a growing recognition in recent years that if we think of science as a fundamentally social and socio-technical activity, we can generate insights from the social sciences that will help to make scientific practice more generative, ethical, equitable, etc. So in other words, we can use social scientific theories and findings to make science better. And so the interdisciplinary collaboration between astronomers and social scientists in this fellowship is really in that spirit, this idea that we can do both things simultaneously. And by turning a social scientific lens onto LSST research, we can produce insights that are valuable to the LSST community itself and also interesting to scholarly communities beyond LSST. So with that in mind, social scientists are involved in this initiative in a couple different ways. As Jenna mentioned, there will be a set of postdoctoral fellows who are social scientists, and there's also a team of senior social scientists. And I'll say a little bit more about each of those roles. So each cohort of Catalyst Fellows will have at least one postdoc who is a social scientist and has proposed some kind of original research related to LSST science. And then they'll be locally advised by social science faculty members at their host universities. We don't know exactly what kind of research questions will be proposed by applicants. They'll be going through a similar process as the astrophysics applicants in proposing their own research agenda. But we expect that we might get proposals looking at questions like how collaboration networks are formed, how interdisciplinary research can be fostered, how gender, race, ethnicity, parenthood, other factors influence scientific practice and mentoring, how scientific practices are evolving with new and big and open data sets. And the reason we want astronomy postdocs and social science postdocs to be part of the same fellowship cohort is because we really want them to be in close contact and mutually benefit from their interactions with each other. So the social science fellows will come to better understand the astronomy community and the science it produces, and astronomy fellows will learn to think about their work in a different way. And both will be sharing knowledge and perspectives on the socio-technical arrangements that produce astronomy research, as well as the broader social implications of astronomical So finally, there's also a team of senior social scientists, of which I'm a member, and we're involved in helping to develop and run the Catalyst Fellowship by sitting on the steering committee, and we'll serve as mentors to both astronomy and social science fellows. And we'll also be conducting our own social scientific research related to LSST science. So I know that was super quick, but I will be around for the Q&A, and you can also feel free to reach out to me at this email address if you don't get a chance to ask questions here. Also, I believe these slides will be posted, and the email addresses of the other members of the senior social science team are listed on the slide, so feel free to reach out to any of us. And up next is Dr. Rachel Mandelbaum, Professor of Astrophysics and Cosmology at Carnegie Mellon University, who will tell you a bit more about the LSST Interdisciplinary Network for Collaboration in Computing, or LINC.
Thank you for the handoff. I'm going to just share my screen. Let me just check. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm very pleased to, it sounds like okay, muted, great. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here, and I'm happy to tell you about LINC, the LSST Interdisciplinary Network for Collaboration in Computing, and its connection to the LSSTC Catalyst Fellowship. LINC began as an initiative began as a collaboration between LSST Corporation and the 4 universities for which I put the logos at the top of this slide: University of Arizona, Carnegie Mellon, Northwestern, and University of Washington. So the motivation behind LINC is that, as you all know, we all have an enormous unique photometric data set from LSST covering a large fraction of the sky in a 10-year time period. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory will not only run the survey, but also provide process data products to the science community, along with data access tools such as the Rubin Science Platform. The community will then want to use that data set to answer big science questions in cosmology, structural formation and evolution, the astrophysics of compact objects, Milky Way structure, the formation of our solar system, and the potential menace of Earth orbit crossing objects. To answer these questions and many others, we're going to need to build on the LSST data set as released by Rubin Observatory. For example, LSST is going to measure millions of objects changing brightness each night. We'll need additional means to know which are the most interesting to follow up with other telescopes before they fade. LSST will show us the positions on the sky of incredible numbers of galaxies. We'll need methods to not only measure distances to make 3D maps of the universe, but also we'll need to quantify the performance of those methods and their impact on the science. And LSST will show us a color movie in which objects move in the sky. The community will need tools to determine the orbits of solar system debris, especially those that may pass close to Earth. These scientific needs are in addition to the new scientific fields and the important questions that will inevitably arise directly from LSST data or during survey operations. LINC involves, therefore, a set of programs that is aimed at helping the LSST science community collaborate differently than before in order to make the most of this amazing data set. Vast improvements in technology just over the past few years make it possible to envision easily sharing full end-to-end analyses and expertise, not just data or tools. Being able to reproduce and then scale up or build on past analyses will greatly enhance the credibility and impact of both the original and new work, which are powerful draws for community buy-in and for expanding the user community beyond R1 centers with substantial resources already. That in turn will generate more tools, expertise, and discoveries. So LINC seeks to drive this change through a dedicated software and computing infrastructure group, funded community workshops, incubators, a large steady visitor program, and training programs. One aspect of LINC is training the next generation of scientific leaders. Researchers who are just starting to get engaged in research in these areas of astronomy can sometimes spend too little time doing creative work and much more time writing software pipelines that turn out to be similar to each other, tracking down the latest versions of code, struggling to get them to scale up to larger data sets, and searching for the computational facilities that will let them actually do the science. The price of entry for those outside of R1 universities and in traditionally underrepresented groups is even higher. LINC seeks to help to train and mentor researchers everywhere to share analyses and tools. Enabling this broader access to expertise, pipelines, computational power, and thus discoveries is a key driver for LINC. And the LSSTC Catalyst Fellowship Program design, which you heard about earlier in this session from Jenno, reflects this vision. For the rest of this talk, I'm going to tell you more about other aspects of LINC from which Catalyst Fellows will benefit along with the rest of the community. So the Schmidt Futures Foundation has recently approved funding for a software infrastructure development project that will fill a major capability gap in community analysis software for LSST. The scale and complexity of LSST data will demand high quality, robust analysis software frameworks to enable your scientific discovery. These frameworks should be based on industry standard tools. They should make use of common technical solutions to computational challenges across diverse science cases. They should enable development of analysis tools that efficiently access and operate on the LSST data. And they should be open source with curated documentation and examples to ease adoption. By providing open source software along with support for its adoption, this program will create a more equitable scientific landscape. So with support from the Schmidt Futures Foundation, we're going to develop open, scalable, and extensible analysis frameworks and make them freely available to the astrophysics community. In practice, the work that was described is going to be carried out by an agile team of software engineers and support scientists at Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Washington. The support scientists are specifically meant to serve as the interface to the broader LSST science community. For example, helping other scientists at other institutes to implement tools within the frameworks, curating documentation and demos to ease adoption, and so on. There is also funding to enable community engagement programs at all phases of the project, and Catalyst Fellows will be given additional opportunities to engage. Funded and in-kind computing resources will enable early adoption and application of the software to precursor data sets and early LSST data by the community, by the LSST science community broadly, and organized groups within that community, such as the LSST science collaborations. So to encourage the science community to help shape the design and functionality of the analysis system, we plan to deliver a science analysis platform built on Jupyter Hub to experiment with precursor data and do science with that data before LSST comes online. Computing resources at the level of 2 million or so CPU hours per year, and a petabyte of disk storage for precursor data and derived catalogs. Workshops to define the functionality of the software frameworks and the tools we will build with community input. Incubators to help research teams undertake their own science using the tools and analysis framework, and hack weeks so that the community can work together to learn and test the tools. Okay, so how will Catalyst Fellows benefit from LINC more broadly? So the LINC community engagement activities like incubators, hack weeks, workshops, seminar series, and so on, are going to provide a broad network of collaborators, and fellows will have special opportunities to engage with those activities and benefit from that network of collaborators. Also, the LINC Frameworks Initiative will provide software and computing resources to support the success of all of the Catalyst Fellows, regardless of their host institution. With that said, as Jenno mentioned, the Catalyst Fellows who are hosted by a LINC hub will have 4-year terms to enable them to devote more time to engaging with software tool development. Of the LINC hubs, Northwestern and University of Arizona are accepting fellows this year. By fostering a sense of community and by providing access to professional software and computing resources, LINC is going to improve inclusion in our field, and Catalyst Fellows will directly benefit. LINC is designed to build upon and complement the federal investments in Rubin Observatory construction and operations. So I mentioned benefits for Catalyst Fellows, but really we hope that it will benefit every single one of you in the audience and beyond in the LSST science community. So thank you for your attention. I will be around for the Q&A and also staffing the link booth for part of the networking time. So I'm happy to interact with all of you during the rest of this Ideas Lab. But for now, I'm going to hand it off to our next speaker, Željko Ivezic from the University of Washington, who's been a Rubin Observatory team member since its early days.
Thank you, Rachel. Before I start, let me thank again Jenna, Rachel, and Jim and the rest of their team for setting up this fantastic program and securing these funds. Before you learn how science funding works, it's easy to make a wrong assumption that money is just there and flows seamlessly. But in practice, it takes a lot of work, hard work, to secure kind of funding that LINC has. So everybody should be very thankful to Jenna and Rachel and Jim and many other people who worked very hard to secure this funding. This is a fantastic program. So I was asked to briefly go through few slides about where the project stands now and what can you expect to get from Rubin Observatory. So do you see my talk? Do you see my slide?
Yes.
Excellent. So there will be some interesting bits and pieces of information. So I put this talk on web. In the upper right corner, there is a LSST shortened URL for this talk. It's LOX, LOX. In Seattle, we are proud of our LOX, but this was randomly generated. It's pure coincidence. So what I want to tell you today is just to briefly remind you of what science we are trying to do with LSST. I will show you a few pretty pictures demonstrating that we are almost done with the construction of Rubin Observatory. And then I'll show you a few things that you should pay attention to if you want to become a power user of LSST data products. Originally, LSST meant different thing, but now it means Legacy Survey of Space and Time. It's a survey, it's a project that will be undertaken at Rubin Observatory. And here is Rubin Observatory put in the context of some other cutting edge projects. You can see two space telescopes that will continue Hubble legacy, one with much larger mirror, the other one with much larger field of view. And then you can see 4 ground-based telescopes. And so Rubin Observatory and LSST on this slide don't look super impressive. They're almost the smallest ones. But what is standing out for our observatory is the huge product of mirror size and the field of view size. And this allows you to scan the sky, to observe the sky much more rapidly than any other instrument that has 8-meter mirror with it. In particular, if you compare how fast LSST can scan the sky to a given depth, it's about 100 times faster than, say, Keck telescopes or VLT or any other 8-meter telescope, Gemini, South and North. So what other telescopes would take 1,000 years to complete, we can do in 10 years. So that's the main reason why Rubin Observatory is so unique and LSST as a survey will be so unique. Why do we want to do that? It's a relatively long story. There is so-called science book on AstroPH that is about 500 pages, if I remember correctly, that describes these 4 main science themes in gory detail. We call it affectionately, or used to call it 100 PhD thesis book. So I would suggest if you already have a sub area in astrophysics that you're interested in, go look at that book, what other people thought were the hottest topics to address in that context. It's organized by science teams. So we want to do everything from cosmology to asteroids. I'm not going to go into detail here. This does not mean that these are the only science programs you can do with LSST data, but these were the main programs that we used to design the system. Like, why do we have 8-meter mirror? Why do we have 3 gigapixel camera, etc. The key point here is that we will have the same data set. There will be no time allocation committee. There will be one single data set that will be designed to address all these science goals. So 90% of time will be spent on uniform survey, basically going up and down, close to the meridian, scanning the sky every night and doing so for 10 years. And then about 10% of time will be used for specialized programs. So in 10 years, you can observe each point on the sky up to 1,000 times, a little bit less than that. It will be about 100 petabytes of imaging data. And when we detect objects in that data set, we expect to get about 20 billion galaxies and about 20 billion stars. So that will be first time that astronomers will have cataloged more objects than there are living people on Earth. That never happened before. Here is our old map on the sky, how we expect to cover the sky. Here is the latest and greatest baseline. We are in the process of further optimizing cadence. And you can see now it's slightly different, and the galactic plane is defined by dust extinction, etc. All that documentation is publicly available. There will be a workshop in November 16 and 17 discussing further how to optimize details in that cadence if you're interested in cadence optimization. Just to show you how data will be different, this is SDSS image. It's about 3 arc minutes across, 1/10 of the lunar diameter. And this is what we expect from LSST. This is real data from the Subaru telescope to the same depth as LSST will have. So it's the same part of the sky. Now you can see the improvement in image quality and image sensitivity. And that's the reason why there will be so many billions of objects in LSST. So we are almost done with construction. We started construction in 2014. So all the elements of the hardware system and software system are pretty much completed, and we are now in the process of integration, and very soon we'll enter commissioning. So here is the telescope reassembled in the dome. So it was produced in Spain, assembled in Spain, tested, then disassembled. Few thousand pieces, individual pieces were shipped, and it was reassembled even during this COVID shutdown. And next year, it will be integrated with the optics, and then we can start getting images with the 2 cameras that we will have. One is the main camera, this one, and we also have engineering camera that has only one of those rafts. These squares, 3x3 CCDs, these are what we call raft. They are individual cameras, essentially, because all the electronics is packed behind the CCDs. And then finally, we also have exquisite software that is designed to produce data products that will enable science. And so many more details about the system you can find in our overview paper, LOP, LSST overview paper. And you'll find references there to many more detailed publications. Within the context of data products that you will be using and that you probably are most interested in, there will be 3 types of data products. We'll have yearly data releases, just like many other surveys, like SDSS, for example. But we'll also have real-time data processing to find everything that changed on the sky since the last image was obtained in that region of the sky. That will be done within 60 seconds. And all the objects that will be detected and image differences will be reported to a public web stream within 60 seconds. And finally, there will be tools for you to use to start with the basic data products that the project will produce, and then build on top of that and provide further catalogs or analysis for you and for other people to use. Details about data products, the schemas, and what exactly will be computed and how, you can find in this document, data products definition document that is linked below. Here is our current unofficial schedule. It's unofficial because it hasn't been approved yet by NSF. It was changed COVID shutdown. I put it here not because of details, but because of this steel box that includes 2 main dates. That's our range of dates that we think brackets the final construction completion date. So it's early 24. And the second reason why I put it up is these diamonds at the bottom that show data previews. DP stands for data previews, and that's done by our early operations team. And it's designed to teach the team how to release data and to teach our users like you how to use our data products. So here is the basic summary of what will be released and when. The first DP0 is based on simulated LSST images. Then next one will be little camera data. And then the main camera data will be released, about 2 months worth of data in DP2 in summer of 24. And then the first official data release for LSST will be done about a year after the beginning of the survey, because it will be based on the first 6 months of data. And it will take another 6 months to process the data and release the data release. So it is very close to us, and it's time to teach yourself how to use these data products. And Data Preview 0.1 is already available. There are excellent tools for learning about the data and data products. There are some great Python notebooks, tutorial notebooks, where you can learn how to use various aspects of the data product distribution. I went through them. They are excellent. And if you're interested in doing LSST science, this is definitely the first step to do, to learn these tools. In commissioning, we will have 2 months allocated at the end of commissioning for getting survey data quality images that's designed to demonstrate that we are ready for operations. So that will be the first science grade data set that you can do science with. And that will be released in summer of 24. That's maybe to you, it sounds like a lot, but 2 years, little bit more, is not a lot. The time to start preparing yourself to become effective user is now. And I'll finish with this slide again. You also need to learn a little bit about what kind of data products we have. How do we process data? In other words, you will hopefully understand every single word in this first column. So maybe now you look at DRP forced source catalogs, including DIA outputs, and it sounds like, what is that about? But after you go through this preparation process, you will understand everything in that column. And hopefully then, once real data comes online, you will be effective LSST user. So I will stop sharing here, and I would be happy to take a question or two.
Awesome. Thank you, Željko. Thank you for all the speakers who presented this morning. We've got a little bit of time for Q&A, and I've dropped in the chat a couple times the link to our Slido, which we're using to collect questions. We probably won't get to every single one of them here in the next 10 minutes. So ones that we don't get to, but our persistent questions we'll try to either put on the website or write answers and post them. I also just want to mention that some people have reported in the GatherTown already having some audio issues, and I suspect some of that is due to Zoom and GatherTown fighting over your microphone. So before we panic, let's make sure we close out Zoom after this and move to GatherTown in about 10 minutes. And then we'll worry about the technology on that end. But please do let me know if you're having issues in 10 minutes. Okay. So I would propose that I moderate and sort of ask the sort of top questions as they're coming up. The number one question that I see ranked right now is this fellowship primarily geared towards LSST data for observations, or are theoretical simulation projects also eligible? And I think I'll ask Jenna if she can answer that.
Theory projects are welcome as well. One thing to keep in mind, though, is we do want projects that are directly related to LSST, Rubin LSST. So it's not enough just to say, oh, I'm going to do some theory project on dark energy. But if it is a simulation that has direct bearing on what people will be getting from the data, that's completely acceptable. And I also forgot to mention in my presentation that vital preparatory work is also acceptable. The first cohort of fellows obviously will start their fellowship before full operations. And so preparatory work, precursor surveys is all completely fine.
And Jenna, while I have you speaking, I'll jump a couple down here. Do I need to incorporate social science into my application?
No, that's not necessary. We don't expect that astronomers have any familiarity with social science. I mean, if you do, wonderful, but that's absolutely not expected. What we're a little more interested in is that this is appealing to you to work in an environment where some social scientists might be asking you questions, and really that this is more a learning experience. But even so, if you don't want to collaborate with social scientists, you don't have to make that a major part of your plan. You know, just be aware that this will be the environment, and we hope that that's a positive thing for you.
Okay, let's see. The next question I see in here is sort of specific to the requests for which institutions you're going to be at. And so let me sort of combine a couple of these. Can people select multiple institutions as their host institution? Do they have to have letters from all the ones they would like to be hosted at?
No, I'll take the second one. You just need, there'll be a pro forma. We'll basically provide a template, a pro forma letter from your top choice institution, just so that we know that they know you're applying to go there. It's not a letter of recommendation, just we know that they're understanding what's happening. And that's only for your top choice institution. As opposed to applying to multiple institutions, I'd have to run that by our logistics committee. Our thought is primarily that you'll have a main single host institution. Although I do know that some of the consortia have very close relationships amongst the institutions. For example, I think IPMU in Tokyo, Japan, there are 3 institutions all in Tokyo that are very, that work closely together. And the Kentucky Consortium, I think they also are very tightly connected. So if you have a specific question, you can feel free to email me about it, and I'll run it by our steering committee or our logistics committee.
I'm going to ask one slightly out of order in the ranking here, but I think it's a good broad question. Does Link or any other aspect of the fellowship have GPU or other specific cloud computing resources that fellows can make use of? Maybe Rachel, do you want to touch on that?
Yes. So for the first couple of years of the Link software and computing infrastructure program, we have funding for cloud credits, and we've secured in-kind high performance computing resources at the level of, a few million CPU hours. I say CPU hours, but it's actually a mix of both CPU and GPU resources on a system which is set up for data intensive applications. So I know a lot of people, for example, who want to work on machine learning or AI applications with like GPU, and that's something that can be accommodated through in-kind resources from multiple Link institutes. Let me check. Vicky, did you want to add anything to that, or does that cover it sufficiently?
Yeah, it covers only that there are GPU resources in other Link institutions, including Northwestern, of course, I know. So there will be opportunities and people can use them across the Link institutions.
Thank you. The next couple of questions I'll sort of tie together here. Can we talk a little bit about some of the logistics of salary being scaled to host institution countries and different institution practices, and also in thinking about the expansion sites, are those limited to the ones that are listed on the website?
Again, I'll take the second part first. The expansion sites are absolutely not limited to what are those that are listed on the website. If you have an institution that you're keen to go to, you can absolutely reach out to faculty there. I recommend emailing the fellowship. I think there's a fellowship website, or me directly, just to make sure. We have a partnerships committee that is looking into expansion sites, and you might want to make sure your institution qualifies. You might think it's small, but we think it's a major R1 powerhouse, and you don't want to propose for that. For the first question, could you remind me, was it about salary?
Yeah, it's especially for the international applicants, how we're going to deal with salary and different expectations of salary in different countries.
That's a great question. And in fact, it led to the formation of our logistics task force to deal with exactly things like that. So we will try to establish as much parity as possible between fellows in the US and outside of the US, subject to regulations at the international institutions, for example, and international countries. For example, if the international institution has a defined range for people at a postdoc level, we have to respect that. But independent of explicit regulations of the host institution and country, we will try to establish parity to the extent possible.
I think another sort of related, is there a limit to the number of applications, or I'll add this, or fellows per host institution?
There is no limit on the number of applications per host institution, but we will only allow one fellow per host institution.
All right, I'm scrolling through. More questions are trickling in, so thank you everyone for continuing to add these. And again, we will, any ones we don't have time to answer in the next 2 minutes, we will try to make sure they're added to the website, or points of clarity are added to the website especially. Let's see. Let's see, one of the easy questions, when is the applications going to be due? I can answer that. It's on the website, but I will answer that. Applications are scheduled currently to be due on November 15th, so sort of right in the middle of the standard astronomy postdoc and fellowship timeline. So we're hoping to not rush you, but also not be the last ones that you have to think about. Okay, let's see. Another question. What's the expected range of seniority for people taking this position? There's another question here about limiting it to within 4 years of a PhD. Jenna, do you want to talk about that?
I think anyone, you might have a strong application at any level, from just having finished your PhD to 4 years out. We decided on 4 years following the precedent set by the Hubble Fellowship to give applicants an extra year because of the pandemic. A lot of people haven't been able to work properly recently. But I know I do plan to instruct this selection committee to strive for balance. And so this brings up the point that one axis for balance could be this immediate graduate versus a more experienced postdoc.
Is there a limit on number of applications per fellow?
Dude, think of yourself. I think each person should just submit one. I haven't thought about that. I'll have to bring it up if that becomes a real question. You know, you can rank multiple host institutions. So that's why there's a restriction. You can only, each institution can only accept one fellow. So you can then look at your second, if you have a strong application, your second choice institution. I don't see any need for submitting more than one application.
I agree, but I suppose if it came up, we would have to discuss it. Okay, my clock registers 8 a.m. Seattle time exactly. So I'm going to cap the Q&A here. I recognize that there are still lots of questions we weren't able to combine, though I think some of them have been sort of addressed. So we will review these Q&A, and as we go throughout the day, because again, there's a whole second session of the Ideas Lab that will kick off in a few hours as well. So more questions will come in, and please do add them to the Slido link that was in your email. And we will try to make sure that they are recorded somewhere. Thank you all. There are more than 90 people here, which blows my mind, and I'm so excited that you all came and gave us your time this morning for the info hour. Now I would invite you all to come over to GatherTown. The servers are spun up. I see people popping into existence in our virtual space. So please do click over into that link. I'll leave this Zoom window open here, but I would ask you all to probably leave the Zoom because, again, horrible feedback can occur. So jump over to the GatherTown. And if you are having any problems, please come find me. And other than that, thank you. And I will see you in the next platform in about a minute.